There's a war being fought that no one's talking about. Sure, due to climate change, many plants, animals, birds, and mammals are under threat of extinction. But this is nowhere near the number of languages in danger.
According to UNESCO, out of the 8,324 languages documented, only 7,164 are still spoken. And out of these, at least half will cease to be spoken by the end of the century.
And that's being optimistic. Some estimates say that by 2100, there'll be less than 300 languages left. A loss of heritage and knowledge, which will have truly cataclysmic consequences. The combatants in this war include the media, conflict, education systems, globalization, the politics of fear, suppression, and division. But how did we end up in this situation? Are there any solutions? And what is it that we're even at risk of losing? While it's become a cliche to talk about finding a cure for cancer from some uncontacted tribe in the Amazon, Indigenous languages really do offer untapped repositories of knowledge, synthesized over generations of speakers' constant interaction with a specific environment. It's reckoned that over 87% of the world's plant and animal species haven't been formally identified by science. And as we navigate the deepening waters of climate change, the decimation of countless plants and animals, this statistic highlights the sheer urgency of the situation. But why bother? I mean, would we really be missing out on anything important? And surely it would be convenient if everyone spoke the same language. Well, from the air you breathe to the food you eat, your very existence hinges on our ability to interact with nature through this unwritten ancestral bank of knowledge we call language. But it's not all doom and gloom. A generation growingly aware of what stands to be lost is taking up arms against the world, suffocating in monolingualism.
Of the world's 7,164 languages, most receive extremely minimal attention, their only form of documentation being a mere Swadesh list. However, when we do study them, these languages often reveal citadels of extreme complexity that would have otherwise been deemed impossible or simply overlooked. Take for instance OSV word order, which, if it weren't for Urarina, a language spoken by fewer than 3,000 individuals in the rainforests of Peru, would have been dismissed as too unnatural to occur in any natural language.
Languages like this serve as a testament to our remarkable ability to adapt language to a multitude of landscapes, all whilst transmitting ancestral knowledge which could benefit us today. For example,
Siberian tribes such as the Tofa and Todshu classify reindeers according to their age, sex, fertility, and use. The Ifugao of the Philippines, renowned rice farmers, have 27 names for rice storing pottery, 30 names for types of woven baskets used to carry food, and 130 phrases related to the payments surrounding rice pond fields.
Heck, they even have a creation myth centering around the instructions for rice cultivation.
And groups like the Morovo of the Solomon Islands, having observed the sea for generations, link lunar periods with fish behaviour, enabling them to reliably and sustainably provide food for their families.
As you might have been able to work out, it's not just the languages that are at risk. Also facing extinction is knowledge itself. Okay, having said that, it might seem like there's nothing we can do, but that couldn't be further from the truth.
Thanks to the work of activists, languages like Guarani in Paraguay and Maori in New Zealand have gained official status. Books, are being published in languages like Yiddish, Rus, and Tuvan, making them more accessible to potential speakers.
Although also possibly having the side effect of petrifying them.
And weddings are being held in languages like Cornish and Breton.
Languages, even with relatively few speakers, can remain relevant to a community, as has been the case with Gaelic in the Republic of Ireland, where, despite the failure of language revitalisation movements, the language has assumed the role as somewhat of a cultural artefact, an enduring symbol of Irish identity, something people can say is theirs. In this cultural artefact state, people are generally more than willing to forget the stigma surrounding the language and reclaim an identity which once belonged to them. Although however useful this designation is, it often comes into conflict with the desire for the language to become relevant, functional, and more widely spoken. This is due to the fact that ultimately, language revitalization is a balance. Linguists mustn't rush the officialization process or coin words too fast, as there has to be a real desire from the speakers to see their language revitalized. Otherwise, efforts like this are pretty pointless and risk alienating the very speakers themselves, condemning the language to a death by suffocation under the rising tides of globalization. Therefore, language loss ought not to be viewed as some neutral, technocratic issue, as it is in fact highly, politically and emotionally charged. And so at its core, language revitalization should always be about reuniting a language, an abstract, intangible entity, with its estranged speakers.
For this reason, most successful language revitalization movements are accompanied by just a touch of nationalism or secessionism, as was the case with languages like Basque or Hasidic Yiddish.
It has to be said though, language revitalization is a long, arduous process. Take for example Cornish, where it took over 100 years for there to emerge the first English-Cornish bilingual children.
Or the case of the Mande language, or more accurately, languages. Several related dialects had to be standardized into one, in order to stand a chance of surviving against a large killer language like French. In reality, this is something that the Italian, French, and to a lesser extent Spanish, had themselves done with their dialects in the process of nation building.
Therefore, whilst language death is fundamentally a social issue, it's often the state that acts either as the primary agent of language oppression or a biased upholder of a particular language. Anyway, that's all for this week. If you found this video informative, consider liking, subscribing, and don't forget to tune in for next week's episode.